Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AWS Show and Tell. I'm Anil Nedimanti, your host today, joining from New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey. I am a senior solutions architect here at AWS, and I'm joined by our AI specialists today from the AgentCore team. I let them introduce themselves. So we'll go with Kosi. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Kosti. I join you from the Bedrock AgentCore product team. I personally lead a few of the primitives that we recently launched in public review, runtime, and as well as tools like Code Interpreter and Browser. And I'm super excited to be here today and doing a deeper dive on the tools. Rita?
Yeah, I can go next. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Veda Raman. I am a GenAI SA specialist. So I work very closely with Kosti to get these AWS Agent Core tools out to all of you. I'm glad to be here today.
Thanks, Veda. Yeah, hello everyone. Rahul Sharma, Senior Specialist SA, supporting Agent Core and specifically first-party tools that we're going to talk about more today. Super excited and look forward to sharing some more information.
Cool, folks. So, thanks for joining, from all over the world. I know people, you tell us in the chat, feel free to let us know in the chat where you're joining from. We have people joining from, India, from Dubai, from New Zealand. I've seen people from everywhere in the live stream. So let us know in the chat. And also put in the chat, where you are in your agentic journey. Are you learning how to build agents? Are you looking to build multi-agent systems? Feel free to post it out there. Now, with that said, we are doing a deep dive series on Bedrock Agent Core. So today we are going to cover more specifically an area, for that covers like Bedrock Agent Core browser, code interpreter, and we call these as tools, right? So we will go into detail. So Kosti, do you want to break this down? Do you want to give us, give the audience a recap of, what Agent Core is, if they're catching up with this session?
Yeah, Neil, thank you so much. First of all, again, thank you for being here. I personally join you from the Bay Area here in Palo Alto, and excited that we have coverage from across the globe in many continents. Thank you, thank you. So the three main areas that we're going to cover today is, first of all, a quick refresher of what is Bedrock Agent Core. I remind everyone what it is, how you can use it, and we're going to dive deep in terms of the capabilities, the use cases, how it works, and a demo of the tools that we offer as part of the AgentCore browser and Code Interpreter. But what is AgentCore and why care about it? So what we heard from our customers is that they tend to start with their own framework or an open source framework like LangGraph, LangChain, Crow AI, Google ATK. They build agents, they add tools, but then they need to productionalize these agents in a more deterministic, secure, and scalable way. And this is why we launched what we call AgentCore runtime, that is a serverless compute environment, fully isolated, and allows you to scale your agents as needed. But an agent is not just good by itself. It's actually as good as the tools that it has. So the tools that one can expose to the agent are either your own APIs or our own first-party tools that we will speak today. For your own APIs, we've designed a capability called AgentCore Gateway, where you can expose those tools to an agent using that gateway. But we have also designed our own tools like Browser and Code Interpreter so that you can make your agents navigate the web or execute securely agent-generated code in an isolated environment. Of course, it's not only the only piece that you actually need. You need to have some proof of identity. You need to be able to give access to your agents to remember short and long-term memories, and you need to be able to inspect and analyze what has this agent done and what exactly thinking or traces or tools it has invoked in an end-to-end chain. And we offer all of those capabilities for you, either via our AgentCore identity primitive or AgentCore memory or observability. But in today's session, as we mentioned, we'll focus predominantly on those two tools, the browser and code interpreter. So let's dive deep on the browser piece.
Right. So why do we need this browser, right? So I think that's a question that will be coming up, right? These agentic applications, they need to be able to access the real world, maybe get some stock data. That's kind of what we're going to see now, right? So Kosi, yeah, break it down for us.
Yeah. Why do agents need browsing, right? Same question applies. Why do humans need browsing? We need it because we navigate the web, we perform actions, we, for example, buy things, we use it to test that a website works, we use it to analyze and do competitive analysis in terms of prices and across different competitors, understand competitive research, read reports. Same thing, same reasons that we as humans need the browsers. This is the same reasons why agents need the browsers as well. So they need to be able to do multi-step forms. They need to be able to do some back office automations. They need to be able to navigate websites and do QA testing. They need to be able to access ERPs, and they need to be able to also scrape the web and do all kinds of analysis so that they produce reports. And that's why we decided to create AgentCore browser to give a fully managed browser for your agents. Now you might be asking, and what is exactly the browser? Like, what kind of capabilities do you offer as part of it? At the crux of it, it's a fully managed headless browser, fully serverless environment that you can very, very quickly, in a sub-second latency, spin up, or not you, your agent, as it needs a browser, can decide to spin up a browser, our own AgentCore browser, with a sub-second latency, and it can use that browser to perform any kind of actions. And it can orchestrate those actions either in a fully deterministic way, and we can speak about what this means, or in a fully stochastic, using an LLM to produce what is the next step that the agents should take within that browser. And that session can last, with the browser, can last many hours. The same way that we humans browse the web for many hours, maybe too many, the same way agents using AgentCore browser can run a browser for up to 8 hours. And we securely offer this environment with full-on isolation. It's a dedicated micro VM for your own browser. Nobody will reuse it. The moment it ends, the browser underlying instance ends as well. And it's fully observable, meaning the more you can immediately see what that browser or agent using that browser is doing with a live view endpoint. You can take over if you want that endpoint to perform additional actions. That at the same time is being recorded, so you can inspect that session after, so that you understand what your agent did with that browser. And of course, we have comprehensive logging for you to also inspect. And as I mentioned, it's a fully managed environment where it scales without you worrying about pre-allocating, right-sizing, or worrying about like how much demand you'll have at different points in time. We take care of all of that complexity for you. And very importantly, we take care of the price performance complexity from your side as well, where we only charge you for however much you actually use from CPU and memory at the per second level. So you don't worry about pre-allocating an instance or right-sizing that instance. We manage that for you, and we bill you for exactly as much as you use of the resources you use at the per second level.
So the core concepts of the serverless compute and the managed services are ingrained in here.
Exactly. and further enhanced to even not have to worry about not only pre-allocating, but also right-sizing here. In this case, it's a fairly new innovation that we've created that you don't worry about allocating a specific size instance. We take care of right-sizing, and we charge you exactly for the amount of CPU and memory you've used at a per second level. So let's go towards the demo. But before we get into the demo, I'd love to make sure that we level set on some terminology that we use as part of browsers. Maybe it's hairy, so I'll very quickly walk you through the three concepts that are playing a role in our managed browser experience. As I mentioned, we offer a headless browser. And what is that browser? It's actually a Chrome-based browser. So the main underlying capabilities are driven by what we call CDP, or Chrome DevTools Protocol. And it allows you to have lower level commands like navigate on a specific page, dispatch key events, and it gives you the ability to have domain exposed events like in the page, the network, and the runtime and input. And if you want precise automation of this of the browser, you can use the CDP. But of course, CDP is for some people quite verbose and brittle. So it takes quite some time to understand what APIs to use. For this reason, you can find open source libraries like Playwright and Puppeteer, which are very popular. And you can orchestrate that browser and in a way generate CDP command using those APIs. And it's much easier for you or an agent to leverage those libraries to orchestrate that Chrome browser. Lastly, there's the concept of the DCV, where it's a high performance streaming protocol, so that we can use for you to immediately see what exactly that browser is doing. So it captures the Chromium window, it compresses it, and it sends it back through a WebSocket so that you can live view, you can interject so that it can do human takeover, and it's also the one that is being recorded in real time for observability. Enough of those hairy concepts. Let's get into the more fun part of it. So what is happening behind the scenes as part of that browser? So as I mentioned, there is the browser Chrome and the DCV server in an isolated execution environment. How does the agent use it though? There's many ways, but the simplest way one can use it, you can ask using, the agent can set a query, for example, search for some shoes on Amazon.com. The agent can use LLM-driven instructions so that and for example, from Nova Act or any other LLM, use a library like Browser Use or Puppeteer or Playwright to instruct to the browser what exactly to do. So the instructions: buy me shoes on Amazon.com. The LLM reasons based on what it sees on the screen. It says, oh, click here, specifically where to click, and it makes a decision on what to do next based on what it sees in the screen. So it says, click here, uses a library, Browser Use, Playwright, etc., sends that command to our own browser instance. That browser is executing the command, takes a screenshot, sends it back to the agent that is using, for example, LLM, and it processes that screenshot and then makes a decision on what is the right next step. So it goes through a continuous feedback loop to achieve the goal of purchasing, for example, shoes on Amazon.com. Now, how this works, as I mentioned, is the Nova Act or the specific library using like Playwright is issuing CDP commands. which we consume through a WebSocket endpoint. We perform it on the browser, and then through that DCV server, we're sending a live UStream endpoint into our observability, or you can use that endpoint and expose it in your own applications. Now, Vida, maybe I would like to understand, and maybe we tell the participants here how to use actually the browser tool, and how they can incorporate it into their applications.
Yeah. So there are two ways you can get started using the browser tool. One is using our good old Boda3 SDK, which is our Python library for accessing AWS API. And so these are lower level APIs through which you can create a browser session, create the browser tool itself, start a session, and so on. But we have also offered another way, which is using the AgentCore Python SDK, which is a little more simpler to use because it has higher level constructs. Again, AgentCore Python SDK uses Boda3 APIs. So using these higher level constructs, you write less code and you use the same set of APIs, but you can get started faster. So these are the two ways, and I'm going to actually show in the demo how you can use the AgentCore Python SDK to get started.
So we have a question in the chat, Veda, and Edward is asking, right, is it open source and does it work with Llama models?
Well, so it depends on the SDK that you're using. So if you use Strands SDK or Browser Use SDK, you're free to use whatever model that you want, but the model needs to support multimodal in the sense that it should be able to look at a screenshot and understand the elements of the browser. So if the model supports, then yes.
Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide, Kosti. So yeah, so here's a higher level flow on how you get started. So the first step is to create a browser resource, right? And by default, we have a browser resource. When you go to your AWS accounts and go to AgentCore built-in tools, you will see already a browser resource that's created for you. And this browser resource is nothing but like a configuration resource where you can say, what are my network settings that I want for all of my browser sessions? What is going to be my S3 settings to save recorded sessions into, and so on and so forth. So this is just a configuration resource. And then once you have that browser resource, then you start browser sessions. And these are those ephemeral sessions that Kosti was talking about, which are execution environments, which can be started when you actually want the workflow to start, when you actually want the workflow to happen via the agent, and then you can shut it down later. So these are ephemeral in nature, serverless, completely running for you. And then once you start the session, in your code, you generate the WebSocket URL and signed headers. And these are required for your agent to connect to that browser over that CDP connection that Kosti was talking about. And then optionally, you can also generate a pre-signed live view URL. So if you have an application where you want to embed this live browser view on your application, then you can actually generate a pre-signed live view URL and set up the DCV client on your application so that you can embed the live browser view on your own application. So this is again optional. We have a live view available in the AWS console. So while you're testing, that's useful, but you want to go into production, you want to embed it on your own applications. And then finally, you have the agent now that is connected to the browser, perform the browser-based tasks. So for example, it wants to do QA testing of your web application, or it wants to automate an entire workflow where you want to download things from a vendor website and fill a form on an ERP system and so on. So the entire workflow, the agent can automate and perform the actions on the browser session. And then finally, after that is done, you can stop the browser session, which will release the resources, and you'll not be charged at that point. All right, I think now we can look at some demo and code.
Let's do it.
Excellent. Yep. Let's go to the demo.
Yep. And just to add, I think Veda and Kosti mentioned this earlier, but you can use, of course, this with any model. You can use the framework of your choice as well from a browser automation standpoint. Browser use is a common one. You can use Playwright directly as well. So that gives you a lot of flexibility as to how you want to design your workflows. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. Thanks for that tip. So here I'm on the AWS console for AgentCore. And so if you navigate over here, you have the built-in tools and you have both the code interpreter and the browser tool here. And so if you see, I talked about the browser resource where you can create a resource and specify the network settings and so on. So I have all of these, a lot of browser resources that I've created in my account. So if I click on one of them, here you will see all of the browser sessions. These are the actual sessions which has the Chrome browser opened up. And these were all terminated. I used them and terminated them. So you will have all of these browser sessions and you can have multiple concurrent sessions running at a time. So this is really useful if you want to parallelize your workflow. And so you can have them concurrently running. So and now I'm going to go to my code and show you an application that I really built. So I wanted to show you how you can use AgentCore browser and an agentic SDK like Nova Act to automate your QA testing of a web application, right? And why do you really need an agentic QA testing application? Like, why do you want agents to test your web applications? There are, I think, two reasons. One is if you want to test your web application from from a human perspective, how would my end users really view are able what's the customer experience for my end users when they use the application? You're able to really test that using the QA when you use an agentic SDK to do the QA testing. The other useful feature of agentic testing is that so before agents even came into picture, the way you would test your web applications is by writing either Playwright scripts or Selenium scripts and so on and so forth. And these scripts are like the lower level commands that send to the browser. These can be brittle because when your UI changes, these scripts can break, right? And it needs resources and time to maintain the scripts and so on. So enter the age of agentic AI, and now you can easily, give your instructions in natural language to these agents, and it can actually go and test from a human perspective, right? So to actually show you this, I built a fake web application. So this is my fake web application, which is a retail website, which let's assume that I have a startup and I want to get this going and I want to test this application. So I created this fake web application so you can go and navigate the products. You can go to the category and navigate the product. So now I want to test this, or when I want to add a new feature, I want to test this so that my feature is not breaking anything and so on, right? So, so let's go back to my code. So this is the web application that's hosted on an S3 bucket with CloudFront and everything. Now, what I did was I used a coding agent to actually go and say, hey, look at all my code, my front end code, and generate natural language test cases. And that's what you see here. So I'll go here and show you a few test cases. So I have homepage load testing, QA tests, set of tests. So this is one test suite which can test my load, how the homepage loads. Here are the test steps itself that my coding agent actually generated, right? So the action would be to navigate the application URL, and this is the expected result, right? And the next step is to verify the page title and what the expected result is and so on. So, and I have a bunch of all of these tests that are listed out here, all in natural language, right? Now, let's go and look at run. Yeah, this is where I am taking in this piece of code, I'm taking all of those individual tests, the JSON files, and now I am creating multiple processes for my testing agent, which is Nova Act, to go and take those natural language prompts and run those tests on AgentCore browser, right? So this is the code for where I am creating multiple processes, one process for each test suite that you see. And each of those will run the single test suite, will pick up a test suite and run. Now let's go to the test runner. This is where the magic happens. So, and this is that where actually Nova Act agent is connecting to AgentCore browser and running each of those tests. So to start with, I'm first importing the browser client class from my Bedrock Agent Core SDK that I mentioned earlier, right? The Python SDK, which makes it easy for you to write code for Agent Core. So from there, from the tools browser client, I'm importing the browser client class in the browser session here. And then here, this is where I'm getting the region that I want to run it against, run it in. And then I am now initializing that an object of that browser client class. So this is where this particular, when I initialize this, it initializes my Border3 client for AgentCore, right? Within, this is the wrapper for initializing that. Now, once I have the object for browser client, and then I can start a browser session. And here I'm passing in that browser tool that I want the browser session to run in. So I have the network configuration set up in this browser tool. I have the S3 configuration where all of the recorded sessions should be stored and everything. So I want this particular session to start using this browser tool. So that's what I'm specifying. And this is optional. Again, if you don't specify anything, it'll use that default browser tool that is already created for you by default. Although it does not have record replay settings in it. But if you do want record and replay settings, then you need to create your own browser tool specifying the S3 location. Right. And after I start, then now I'm generating the WebSocket URL and the headers. And again, this is a wrapper function where we are taking the WebSocket URL, we are getting the WebSocket URL for that particular browser session that started, along with some signed headers, so that now I can pass this to my agent so that it can connect to the browser session. And this is where next I am initializing a Nova Act instance. So again, Nova Act is an agentic SDK that is specialized in browser-based automation. It uses an underlying LLM, which is Nova-based, so which can really understand browser actions, and it can take screenshots and understand the screenshot, and it also works at the DOM level for the browser. So now I'm initializing this Nova Act, and as you can see, I'm sending in the starting page, which is my web application where it is hosted. I'm also sending in the CDP endpoint URL. This is where I want Nova Act to go connect to AgentCore browser, which is essentially the WebSocket URL that I got back when I started the session. And I'm also using the signed headers so that the session is authenticated. And I'm sending in my Nova Act API key here.
So is Nova Act where all the magic happens?
Yes, in this particular example, yes. And of course, you're free to use other SDKs. Browser uses another one. You can use Playwright, right? So this is one of the ways that I can use an agentic SDK to control the actions in the browser. Yes. And then I start the Nova Act instance, right? So, and this is some more helper code where, essentially for QA testing, I want to assert, if the based on what the natural language instructions that I'm sending in, it is actually seeing it is actually passing or failing, right? So that's what I want to assert here. And again, if there's a string input, I want to make sure that those tests are passing. So this is some QA code that I'm using here. So again, here is where we are sending the natural language prompt to Nova so that Nova can take that natural language prompt and run CDP commands on the AgentCore browser. And that is about it. So let's actually see this, run this, and see it in action. So I'm just running the tests. So as you can see, it started 4 different test suites, and all of them are running in parallel. And then so it started running all, it's taking now those natural language test cases and running them against the AgentCore browser. So let's head to the AgentCore page. And as you can see here, we didn't have any live view. So we can see that 4 different live view sessions have come up. And so when I click on this, it actually shows you that browser live view, which is running on AgentCore browser, right? So now as you can see, it's typing out, this is all Nova Act typing on the AgentCore browser and testing based on the instructions that it was given.
So agent is doing the actions now and interacting autonomously.
Yep. And you can see it in action here in live view. Again, this live view can also be embedded in your own applications. You don't have to navigate to the AWS console every time you want to view it live. Let's go back here. So it's still running. Takes about a few minutes. So as you can see, it's thinking and acting. And I have some tests passing and some tests failing here, and I deliberately designed it that way so that we show how it passes and fails. So if you see, it finished testing. Because I parallelized it, it took, because I could run it in parallel, it finished fairly quickly, and you can run hundreds of tests like this in parallel together. So as you can see, I had 2 test suites pass and 2 failed, right? And if you see, this particular test all passed. So as you can see here also, we have thinking steps where the agent is thinking, and then this is the action, click on contact navigation. This is the action that it took. So it thinks and then acts, and then it looks at the screenshots and then acts on based on that as well. So this is the agentic loop that is running here. All right, so let's go back to the browser view itself, and then I wanted to show you another thing here. So now, because I had enabled recording and replay, I am able to view these. This is observability. So I'm able to view the recorded session, and now I can actually go and replay those recording and figure out, hey, if the agent did the right thing, or audit what agent did at every step. So I can really play this. This is not a video recording. This is actually the actions the agent took on the browser. We have captured the DOM actions and everything, and then reconstructed the replay here. So as you can see, this is a recording, and if you see here, it gives you page level details. You can inspect the page DOM here. You can see the actual CDP commands that the browser received. And then the network traffic is 0 here because mine is a really front-end application. I don't have a backend, and so there's no network. But if in a typical application, you will see network logs as well come here. And the agent actions as well, like what did the agent do in this? So it really, if you see here, I can go and play this over here and see it actually focused at this point here, and you can see it'll go to that moment where the agent took that particular action. And here the agent did a click. So when I play that, it actually went and then focused on the homepage and then made a click action there, right? So really nice observability that we recently added, which can give you all the details that the agent took actions on the browser itself.
And using this, of course, since it gives you all the actions that were taken by the agent, you can, of course, optimize your paths as well, right? Try different models, what path it took to get to the actual end goal. deconstruct the actions and things like that and go from there. So it gives you really good breakdown and optimization capabilities as well
Yeah,
for your
yeah,
workflows.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's
And we have like a
all.
couple of questions coming in the chat. So one question is that, do we have like a free tier for this service?
I'll take that. Actually, right now, it's quite free, meaning that up until we enable billing, which is in a couple of weeks, you can play with the service free of charge. And we're in preview, so you can experiment without worrying about the charges. Once we enable billing on October 7th, you will be able to, the service will be part of the AWS free tier. So it will belong to the $200 for new accounts. And then after that, you'll be charged. So yes, we will be part of the AWS free tier. You'll have access, but for now, anyways, it's free of charge. So please go experiment and test. Really.
Yeah, build your agentic applications and let them access the live. Perhaps if you're building a finance application, it could go to Nasdaq and pull the stock tickers. And next part, I think we're going to chat about what how the code interpreter works. But before that, I think Kosi also has to add more to that context, right? So let's switch over to Kosti's side.
That's a awesome demo, Veda. Thank you so much. Let's switch gears towards the other tool, the code interpreter. Like, what is code interpreter? And why would you use it? And why agents need code interpreters? So think of an agent, and I think one of the most popular use case after, of course, the customer support agents, that was the first use case that everybody was speaking about. Now agents generate all kinds of code. And once they generate that code, they need to somewhere validate that that code runs correctly. If they run that code in the same hosting environment that the agent is hosted on, there is danger that this will lead to some bugs that will bring down the agent. So when someone needs to validate that agent-generated code actually works, they can dynamically spin up a code interpreter environment, isolated, low latency environment, so that they can run the code as needed. And that's not only good for validating code, it's actually giving you a lot more superpowers to your agents. Agents now can become data analysts. They can also dynamically think and reason on what exactly code is needed to be generated. They generate it and they can execute it, and they can dynamically automate processes as needed, even if they don't have access to an API or tool to do that process. So code interpreter provides that in a way sandbox environment to validate a generated code, to be able to perform mathematics and do some portfolio math, pricing, and to ensure that this math is not hallucinated LLM generated gibberish, but it's actually math that adds up. It can add, it can do create advanced analytics and perform and generate reports in PDFs and CSVs and all of that. And of course, as I mentioned, in the ideal case, you can mix and match browser tool and code interpreter, where you navigate and dynamically automate processes with both of them. Now, what are the key features that code interpreter offers? In a similar vein as the browser tool, code interpreter is also fully managed serverless. You don't have to worry about managing infrastructure, reallocating resources. It gives you low latency. It can run for across real-time and long-running executions up to 8 hours. And it gives you that isolation that you really need your agents and the environment those agents have. So it gives you an isolated micro VM every time you instantiate a code interpreter session, and you can configure it, of course, to be deployed in your own VPC. As I mentioned before, though, it's not only a code interpreter just environment to execute code, but you can use that execution environment to do a lot of data processing. And to do data processing, you need to be able to analyze large data. And this is why we have ensured that our payload size is 100 megabytes. And you can also import large files directly from S3, and it can reach up to 5 gigabytes. So you can process your Excel files, your CSVs, JSON files very quickly using a code interpreter. And the good thing is that the setup is super minimal. So you can get going with code interpreter super fast. It comes with pre-built Python, JavaScript, TypeScript languages, and a lot of pre-built libraries so that you can get started right away. And of course, in the vein of transparency and observability, we ensure that any time that you execute code in code interpreter, there is logging and CloudWalk message associated with it. Now, before we go down to the demo and pass it to Rahul, maybe I'll give you a quick overview of what is going on within that.
Yeah, let's dive deeper, right? So understand what's happening under the hood.
Perfect. So imagine the end user is asking a query to an agent. How many leap years, let's say, are between 1957 and 2023? The agent, if it directly uses the LLM without any code execution or validation through the code, it most probably will hallucinate. So for this reason, the LLM can generate code or can generate code in, for example, Python, TypeScript, or JavaScript, and you can execute that in that code interpreter session. But this code interpreter session doesn't only offer you ability to execute that generated code, but it offers you ability to interact with that underlying micro VM using a file system. So you can import, read, process files, and you can also do shell commands that are very much needed, for example, to write files, read files, and to be able to not only execute a command, for example, on the environment that we offer, but also in the underlying system that this environment is hosted on. And there's two types of code interpreters. There's the pre-built code interpreter, where you can very quickly instantiate a session with it. And we give you a sandbox only environment where you can access only that micro VM plus S3. And it doesn't have access to any other AWS resources. And it comes through our own configuration of sandbox only. But if you want to deploy it on your VPC, enable public access, or give an IAM role that has permissions to access other resources within the AWS ecosystem, like, for example, DynamoDB or other databases, you can do that. You just have to customize Cloud Interpreter with our own API. Maybe I'll pass it on to Rahul to describe how that configuration, as well as usage of the code interpreter happens, and ideally let's show some code and so in reality how it works.
Excellent.
Thanks, Kosti. Yes. So I think let's get into a little bit of deep dive, and then we can get into a quick demo as well. All right, so let's get to the demo first then. All right, so let's consider a use case that Kosti already described, and which is probably a very common use case around data analysis, right? What we will try to do in this case is we'll try to analyze CloudTrail data. This is mock data, but the idea is to analyze CloudTrail data from your, let's say, from your AWS account, and try to find maybe some interesting activities going on, things that you may want to further double click on, find out what's happening through agents, right? That's the idea. So yeah, so let's start here and see how to basically make it happen, right? Similar to the browser tool as well, you can use the core interpreter with either Boto 3 or the AgentCore Python SDK. Both options are available. What we are using right now is the AgentCore SDK, Python SDK. And you can use the core interpreter tool as well as the browser tool either as custom tools as part of your workflows, or if you're, for example, if you're using strands, then these are available as native tools as well. In this case, just to show a little more detail, we will be using core interpreter as a custom tool. So from the SDK, we are importing that. We also have bunch of other imports to be able to handle some processing and some of the interim steps here. We are also, of course, importing strands, which is the framework we'll be using to build our agent. So getting started is easy. All you need to do is, once you have the import in place, you specify your region as well as your timeout duration, right? So for example, in this case, we want to basically append a session. We want to start a session for code interpreter, which is in US West 2 region. And we want to define a timeout duration, which is 900 seconds in this case, 15 minutes. You can have sessions up to 8 hours long if you wish to. But in this case, we'll be starting this session with a timeout of 15 minutes, which is 900 seconds. There you go, super fast. We have the session available that we can now start using in our agent subsequently. Now, once we have the session, code interpreter session available, what we are doing, of course, here is I'm trying to get some mock data from my S3 bucket. So just to take a look here, these are some mocked up logs for CloudTrail logs from the AWS account, which have been slightly, I would say, processed to make them a little more de-identify some of the information. But the idea is we have a bunch of logs here, line items in JSON format that we want to use, right, and analyze using our agent. So I'm just specifying those details, providing the location in S3 where my logs exist, and so forth, some of the basic information. All right. Once we have that information, again, some other helper functions to identify how many logs we have, what's the content, things of that nature, and also more importantly, to actually get those as part of a variable here so that we can use it to directly copy those logs into code interpreter. So we are retrieving the logs here, and then doing some basic diagnostics here to make sure the logs look okay and identify how many. So we in this S3 bucket, there are a total of 42 CloudTrail events that we'll be analyzing using the agent here shortly. All right. The next thing that we are going to do is, remember going back to the slide that was just shared, you have the ability to directly write information into the code interpreter session, right? In this case, we are taking the logs from our S3 bucket and then streaming those logs directly into the code interpreter session onto the local file system, because that is where we want the agent to write and execute code and analyze them. So I'm just defining where my local file lives, and then I'm defining that I want to copy this using the helper libraries that Core Interpreter provides. And then there is another helper function to invoke code. This is again, uh, I'm using one of the various method that the core interpreter library provides, in this case invoke, to be able to actually provide the specific code that will be generated by the agent and more specifically by the LLM to be ultimately executed by the core interpreter. So a bunch of helper functions here just to make life a little bit easy, and once we start actually using it. All right, now this is where the actual action starts, right? So first of all, we are writing our the logs, the CloudTrail logs, into the core interpreter session, more specifically the file system. So if you see here, the call tool helper function is being called, and I'm specifically using the write files operation to write the file which was locally available into the core interpreter. And then subsequently, I'm doing a list file operation to make sure that the file was actually written. So if you see this bottom snippet of output here, which is what confirms that the file actually was successfully written. So the data now exists for us to go ahead and start analyzing using the agent. Now let's define some prompts and other configs as part of this agent, right? So this is a basic system prompt with that is optimized for speed, and we are just trying to make sure that the agent and more specifically the model understands that it's supposed to be an analyst and give us some interesting findings in these logs. So we run that. And this is where we define the tool that ultimately will be plugged into the agent configuration for it to use and execute code. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is slightly verbose because I wanted to show you all the details, but you can simplify it. For example, if you're using strands, it can be just a simple line of code to basically import the tool and start using it. But you annotate the function as tool, and more importantly, probably the most important part here is we are using the invoke method that the code interpreter library provides to be able to actually send the code to the code interpreter session for it to execute. So with this custom tool defined, let's go ahead and configure our agent. So we define the model, which is Claude 7, 3.7 Sonnet. We have the tool that we just defined as a custom tool. We have the system prompt we defined earlier. And then that's pretty much it from the agent configuration standpoint. And then finally, with all of this done, we are now ready to actually invoke our agent and analyze these logs. So again, a bunch of information in this query, and we are specifically asking it to tell us maybe top 5 services, any threat summaries, and also create a report once it's done with this analysis. So as I run this, so this is the agent, but when I start running this, you'll see that based upon the prompt that was provided, it starts basically understanding what's needed. I also asked it to take a look at the format of the logs to understand it first, and then based upon that, generate code and things of that nature. So it's doing that. It's writing code in Python. The LLM and the agent, the LLM is writing the code, and the agent is using the tool to send it to the code interpreter session, execute it, take a look at the output, give that output back to the agent, and then iteratively basically make changes to the code generated till the time it's actually able to achieve the end goal, which is to be able to analyze these logs. So this might go for a minute or two, but I wanted to show you while this runs and comes up with the output. Uh, if you see here, I had asked it to actually create a report ultimately in a markdown format. So let me open this ultimately, and I'll open this in preview format. So once this runs and everything is completed, this is something, it will generate a report in this format. Of course, you can customize this based upon what you need. This report will be generated on the file system within the core interpreter environment, but you can, of course, using the read capabilities that the core interpreter provides, you can, of course, read objects from the file system and then bring them back as well. So once this is done, I'm actually reading the markdown report, and then that is what I was showing here in a second. So you can, of course, this is a very specific use case, and actually a common use case of using code interpreter in conjunctions with an agent to do data processing. Of course, you can make it more complex. You can have multiple agents where one agent is doing some specific analysis, maybe around open IPs which are exposed. Another one trying to find specific things around maybe unauthenticated calls, and then you may have a supervisor agent who's actually taking all of that information and doing something else. So you can pick and choose how you want to use them, but there are a lot of possibilities in which you can use it. Um, yeah, so if you see here, it's continuing to actually run code iteratively back and forth. It's generating information, and then it should be done here in a second. But finally, it will try to write a report that will come back in Markdown format. Um, all right. So in this case, I think I should highlight very quickly is one of the things is we are using the system code interpreter that Kosti referred to earlier. There is absolutely no configuration as a customer that you have to do. You can just directly use it. It's sandbox. It's super easy to use it to run untrusted code that is generated by LLMs via the agents. So super easy to use. But again, if you have requirements where you want to customize maybe your network settings, you want to provide custom fine-grained roles, you have the option of using a custom code interpreter as well. That is more configured for your use cases, and then use it in conjunction with your agents. So yeah, that was a quick demo. I don't know, Anil, if you have questions coming in or.
Yeah, great demo there. So showing the capabilities of how we can invoke and run, generate and invoke code securely in a sandbox environment. So Rahul,
Mhm.
maybe like Rahul, Kosti, Veda, like maybe let's try to sum it up, right? So we've shown all these different tools and the capabilities of what is possible using the built-in tools. So let's probably go around and understand what is the how does it look like for deploying an agent using these frameworks, being able to use browser sessions. Maybe let's talk about the use cases and maybe security, maybe to sum it up. Ved, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. So maybe I can talk about use cases that we are seeing for browser. QA testing, as I walk through, is very popular because it's very easy to get started with QA testing. Maintaining, playwright scripts or traditional scripts for QA is time consuming. It takes up resources and needs expertise. So this is very easy to get started, and you can parallelize your testing. So that's very popular. The next use case that we've been seeing is general workflow automation. If you see, a lot of our work is done based using browsers, right? And imagine if you can automate all of those workflows and just tell the agent, say, hey, do this for me, right? And general workflow automation, both in a consumer setting and then enterprise setting, I think that has been another very popular use case. Form filling, a lot of these web applications or traditional applications don't have either documented APIs, don't even offer APIs. So the web-based access is the only way that a lot of applications have, and automating those workflows has been very popular. So and general web scraping, that's another thing, and getting information from the web as well. So those are the use cases that we are seeing a lot of browser use happening with coupled with agents. I think it's a very powerful combination.
Thanks
Yeah,
for that. And
on the browser side, I just want to be clear that although we launched it as part of the agents business, the browser we've noticed actually be used completely standalone for other use cases outside of agents as well, which is a very exciting observation and unfolding. So one of the things that we really need to make sure people understand is that everything we described, you don't have to use all together. You don't have to use runtime, or you don't have to use code interpreter browser at the same time. You can pick and choose in a fully modular way, build your solution on top of AgentCore.
That's excellent, right? So, a lot of use cases that are possible when you can generate code live in real time and execute it, right? So yeah, a lot of use cases. Thanks for an awesome session today, and sharing with our viewers, and providing more details here. So this is a deep dive on AgentCore browser and code interpreter. So we have some more sessions coming up on AgentCore memory. That's next. So that's all from our side from this week's episode, and wrapping up here, right? So thanks a lot for watching. Come back again next week.
Thanks for listening.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you, folks.